or any of these, aliens and stuff like that. I mean, but you were also talking to me about like UFO sightings or crashes or something or whatever, even around the Civil War time frame.
Yeah, there was, when I did my research for the novel, I added several pages of references, direct newspaper references of the time when the descriptions back then are so very similar to descriptions we've had through the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. And here's one from September 1864. 1864, that's Civil War. That's right in the Civil War time.
Oh, yeah, it sure is.
A fur trapper named James Lumley watched a sky rocket streak through the sky above the Great Falls of Upper Missouri, which moments later crashed with a monstrous explosion that shook the entire forest and emitted such heat on impact that it turned the ground to glass. So again, you get this great monstrous heat that turns the ground into glass. Reported in the September 1864 Cincinnati commercial. The next morning, Lumley was astonished to find a widespread path of destruction cut through the forest several rods wide. He went on to describe the newspaper as objects at the end of the destruction were divided into compartments and carved with hieroglyphics similar to those found in the writings of ancient Egypt. So, again, you get the hieroglyphics. Even back in the ancient depictions of UFOs in the pyramids and in the Bible, they were all covered with symbols. Again, so you get the symbols here in 1864. The wreckage of the Roswell crash covered with symbols. They all had symbols.
Yeah, I was reading about that again, it makes you, it seems like it ties in, doesn't it?
It ties in back for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Makes me, wonder, I wonder how many different species they are. I mean, I was talking to another guest, which she's going to be back on our show at the end of the month. She runs a reporting center out of Casmere, North Carolina, and, of reports of UFO sightings and stuff like that. And I guess in North Carolina, in that area, it's really high for UFO reportings. But she claims that there is a couple underground military bases there that actually the government is working with aliens, on technology. So it makes me wonder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could be. I don't know. It'd probably stagger us if we knew all the story.
Yeah, and I kind of halfway take what she says is true because, I mean, she's been running this blog and Facebook page for quite a few years now, and she's a retired news reporter, very credible, and she's done a lot of, legwork and investigation. But, I do find that's true because I knew a truck driver that would actually, and he quit because he couldn't take it anymore, but I think he 2 or 3 times he went to underground base where they unloaded his semi-truck, and all of a sudden, they basically made him stare straight either at the steering wheel or straight forward. He was told if he turned his head, he would be shot. And they had a bunch of guards with M16s all around, the cab, making sure he did not look at anything while they unloaded his truck, which he thought was really strange because he thought he was delivering, food products.
Right. I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt that they threatened him and they said, if you even flinch So, yeah, well, I said they did the same thing in Roswell when they went around. They told all these people, they said, if you ever tell what you saw, you and your family will be killed. I mean, everybody that was witness to any of the stuff in Roswell were visited in their homes and told that. So here's another account from 1896. The most startling November sighting came near Lodi, California on November 25th, when a Colonel H.G. Shaw, traveling in his horse-drawn carriage, came across 3 hairless beings. They had tiny ears and stood along the road while their huge cigar-shaped craft hovered behind them over a lake. When asking them where they were from, Shaw was reported to have been unable to understand their warbling chant, but stated each had a bag under their arm attached to a nozzle from which they breathed. And after a time, the 3 walked rapidly toward their ship, opened the door in the side, and disappeared within. The ship then went up and through the air rapidly out of sight. So there's another account from 1896. This colonel in his horse-drawn cart comes across 3 small beings, and they literally, they look at him for a minute and they go back, they get in their ship, they fly away.
Well, it's a lot of reportings of UFOs around water for some reason. I don't know if you noticed that. Either going and coming out of the water or hovering above the water. I don't know if it's like for cooling process or they're, taking water in or I don't know, but it's been a lot of reports of, of that happening. I don't know if you ran across that.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, water is essential for everything on this planet. So it may be essential for them in some way. I don't know. I never got into that. Never really did any research on that. But yeah, a lot of times they're over water, over lakes. So could be.
Yeah, or coming out of lakes or coming out of the ocean,
Yeah.
I mean, there's been even sightings where, like a Navy destroyer, the crewman noticed there was a bright light following them at, real high speed underwater, which even a submarine couldn't have done it, especially back around World War II. So it makes you wonder, I think there's more UFOs circulating around this planet than we even realize.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure there probably are. It would be people would be astonished to know what's really circling around up there. I mean, every now and then, commercial aircraft runs across one, but up much higher in the atmosphere, yeah, who knows what's flying around.
Well, I mentioned this the other night on my show. I had a friend back, I think it was like in the 80s, that he was a vice president of one of the divisions. You remember Republic Airlines?
Yes.
Yeah, they were a big airline at one time. And, and he, told me that during Vietnam time, he was flying, I think out of Guam, I'm not sure, B-52s to drop their load, in North Vietnam. But he said it like once or twice, during all his missions, he'd look off his wing and he saw a UFO. And then one time, I guess the other time, he told me that one zipped by, at high speed, just cut right in front of him. And that's not so bad. But what he told me about, that, he radioed it in, and by the time he landed, there was already guys in suits ready to debrief the whole crew. He was told, not to say a word or else. But then he went in to tell me, some of the pilots, again, since he was a vice president, and again, I don't know what division of public and what type of vice president he was, but he told me that. And he was a former pilot. So, I mean, even before he made vice president, he was flying, the 747s and stuff like that. He told me that other pilots, the same thing, they would radio in that they saw a UFO, and then they land, and then they're told, when they land and are debriefed, they keep their mouth shut, or one, their career is totally over. They're going to lose their license to fly, and strange things could happen to them.
Oh yeah, if retired commercial pilots have came out a lot of times and said that when they were flying, if they were to report a UFO, they're done.
Oh yeah,
their career is their career's over. They're labeled a kook. They're grounded, and that's it. End of the road. And that was told to them. So, in other words, you did not report that. It's just like the beginning of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The guy asked, he said, "Do you want to file a UFO report?" And the guy in the airplane, you hear his voice come back, and he says, "Negative. We don't want to file a UFO report." So they knew that if they did, that was it. They'd be out of a job.
Oh, yeah. That's what surprised me, though, here, was it last November, when these two Navy pilots, with their onboard camera, filmed the UFO. And, they tried chasing after it with their afterburners on. And it is like, a Model A against, a stock car. It was no way they could even get near it. And, they're filming this, they're talking about it, and it's really funny that the Navy released it. I mean,
Well, yeah, you're right. For some reason, that footage got released really quickly. I don't know whether it was a live feed that somebody got a hold of and they couldn't retract it or what. But yeah, and that's been a big thing ever since then. It was definitely UFOs. They were definitely after it, and it was released right away. So there must have been something there. They must have either it was a live feed and it got out of their control, or somebody released it so quickly they didn't have time to stop it. And then these days, when something like that gets released, it gets copied so many times. It gets put on YouTube. It gets put on the internet. There's no stopping it then. It's not like it was in 1947 when they could go in there and shut this little town up and rebuke a couple of newspaper articles. It's a different world now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's face it, before the internet, and the internet, has opened up the paranormal. And not just the paranormal, everything. I mean, your personal history, everything is now open. So, I mean, if somebody posted and somehow got a hold of it, or, whatever, I mean, and it started circulating, there's no way. How is the government going to deny it? But I found it really strange after that came out, the Secretary of the Air Force, in which I don't understand, and I try to dig into it more, was making some type of speech, and somebody asked him, what they thought about, of a world war, and he came back and he said the next world war will not be on land, it'll be fought in outer space. So you can take that two ways, but that came out pretty much right around the same time that video first came out of the two Navy pilots.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a quote here for you since you brought that up. General Douglas MacArthur, New York Times interview, 1955. He's quoted as saying there, "The nations of the world will have to unite, for the next world war. For the next war will be an interplanetary war. The nations of the earth must someday make a common front against attack by people from other planets." So there's MacArthur, 1955. Saying basically almost word for word the same thing.
Well, I do think that the government, knew that there was a lot of things going on, and they probably expected it. I mean, look at what was going around Eisenhower when he was in. Supposedly, some alien species supposed to have had a high meeting with the government, and offered not to attack Earth, but they would give, some technical advances to Earth, but they wanted something in return. And what they wanted, supposedly, was to abduct a few people. And the story goes, when you read about it, it wasn't just a few people that they immediately kind of like broke their, promise, their agreement with the government and started abducting a lot of people.